Bring in our panel. Scott Jennings, let me start with you. I want to play an excerpt from Minority Leader Mitch McConnell pushing back on Democrats who want to change Senate rules for election reform, including making sure that state legislatures can't interfere in the voting process. Take a listen.
They assume that people who get elected to the legislatures are idiots. Why would any legislature in America want to overturn the counting of votes? They have to get elected by those people too. The notion that some state legislature would be crazy enough to say to their own voters, we're not going to honor the results of the election is ridiculous.
Scott, with all due respect to Leader McConnell, has he been listening to Donald Trump, Republican members of Congress, or Republican state legislators since November 2020? That's exactly what they've been pushing, overturning the will of the voters in their states.
Well, two issues, Jake. Number one, I think he's also saying that if you're a state legislator and you say, I'm going to overturn the results of an election on a ballot that I didn't like, but I also won on, so I'm going to fix one election and not the other, then it would make no sense. The other issue McConnell has is broader, and that is he simply opposes any effort by the Democrats to federalize or have a federal takeover of what has historically in this country been a state-run system, a decentralized system of elections. And he wants no interference from the federal government in what the states, counties, and municipalities do with their elections. He's not going to change it. I don't think anybody in the Republican conference is going to bend on it.
Just to make, not to make too fine a point on this, but that's what not only legislatures, but congressmen, David, you can talk about this. Members of Congress, Republican members of Congress from Pennsylvania, for example, with one exception, all voted to not count the votes, the electoral votes from Pennsylvania, even though they were elected on that same ballot. I agree with you, it makes no sense. But David, help me out here. That's what they tried to do.
Yeah, they absolutely tried to do it. And also, you know, one thing that is has to be understood here is that these state legislators tend to run very different races. They don't have necessarily the same kind of constituency that you have in a presidential election. So it's a little bit of a different electoral incentive. But here's the thing, though, Jake. If Mitch McConnell is dead set against federal interference in these state presidential elections, you know what he should be willing to do? Reform the Electoral Count Act, because that is exactly what the Trump administration tried to do. That's what the team Trump tried to do, was to get federal interference in these state elections through manipulation of the Electoral Count Act. And that is something that is low-hanging fruit that should be consistent with Leader McConnell's philosophy of hands off of these state elections. Because right now the Electoral Count Act is too vulnerable to manipulation at the federal level that could overturn the results of an election.
And David, you wrote a great piece in the Dispatch about this. The Electoral Count Act was written in 1887. It's confusing. It's difficult to understand. The language is weird. And they were trying to exploit, through bizarre interpretations, the idea that Pence could overthrow the election. Yeah. Anna, why not? If you're Chuck Schumer, why not at least do that? You don't even have Sinema and Manchin on board to pass or to change the filibuster rules to pass the election reform bills. Why not say, okay, Mitch McConnell, let's do what David French says and make sure that at least this hole is plugged?
Because I don't think Chuck Schumer has the political will to do it, and I think he is afraid of the pushback, and I think he is concerned about the institutionality. Listen, doing this and breaking the filibuster, making carve-outs for the filibuster is something that's very difficult even for Joe Biden. It's difficult for Chuck Schumer. It's difficult for Joe Manchin. So there's an entire group of people who are Democrats for whom this is very difficult. And Jake, I just want to say, I'm so glad that we are talking voting reform and voting laws this day, the day before January 6th, because we all have to keep in mind that January 6th was about overturning legitimate election results. They were not able to do it by violence, but some Republicans have dedicated themselves for the last year to do it legislatively, whether it makes sense or not.
And Scott, the White House says in Biden's speech tomorrow he's going to call out the singular responsibility Trump has for the Capitol attack, which is something that both Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell said at the time. Meanwhile, Donald Trump canceled his event tomorrow. Is that welcome news for most Republicans?
Well, I mean, any Republican in their heart of hearts, if they were being honest, would tell you they have eyes and ears and a television, or they were in the Capitol that day. They saw exactly what happened. They know who's responsible for it. They know who whipped up a mob. They know who encouraged the feeding of the lies and fed the lies directly to the mob. I mean, there's no mystery here on what happened. Regarding the Electoral College Act, if I may go back to this for just one moment, McConnell did open the door to this process today and said he was open to it. He thought it looked like it was something that needed to be dealt with. I know that he thinks the threshold that the law gives, essentially one senator and one congressman can give a wave of false hope and set off, in this case, a crisis under the confines of this law. And so I think my sense is that if something is going to happen, it's going to be done in a bipartisan way. The real question here, like the infrastructure bill, if the real question here is, will Chuck Schumer allow this chunk of it, as you suggested, to go without the other things? This should not be linked to what the Democrats want to do on other election stuff. This is its own issue. It deserves to be looked at. And I think there's openness to that, as long as it's not linked to the other stuff that Republicans simply just don't agree with.
And David, Republicans, as we were talking about, were quick to call out Trump right after the attack. Remember, this is what Kevin McCarthy sounded like a year ago this month.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding.
The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
Now, McConnell doesn't talk about this much, but he hasn't changed his position. Kevin McCarthy, I don't even recognize him in that clip. He completely sounds different, David.
Yeah, here's the depressing truth, Jake. If you look at the data, even right after January 6th, there were 2 Republicans whose approval ratings plunged with Republican voters, and one whose approval ratings remained sky high. The one whose approval remained sky high was Donald Trump. The 2 Republicans whose approval ratings plunged after January 6th, Mike Pence, Mitch McConnell. In other words, the message was sent very loud and clear from the base to the party establishment that you have to stick with Donald Trump. And these guys have heard that, and they've responded to that. And that's sad.
And Navarro, final thought?
I just think it's so shameful and so pathetic. And I'm so glad you played that. And I hope that tomorrow, January 6th, we play it over and over again. Because there were so many Republicans that at the moment had the backbone to call a spade a spade. And today have the lack of shame to pretend that it didn't happen, to want to move on. And my question time and time again is, forget about putting country over party. How about showing some loyalty and gratitude to the law enforcement officials who took the blows and who took the attacks physically in order to protect them? Have they no shame? We cannot forget what happened on January 6th.
Thanks to all of you. Really appreciate it.